Hello and welcome to another instalment of UK Column Live. Today is Monday the 25th of March 2013. I'll be joined today with Mike Robbins. How are you doing, Mike?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Fantastic. Excuse me, have you been looking out at the weather today?
It's a bit chilly.
It's a bit chilly, a bit cold. It's a bit cold in here as well.
It's not snowing today though.
Not quite yet, yeah. Not quite. Just a quick apologies, I'm sorry you have to put up with my voice today, but I seem to have a frog stuck in my throat, which is a bit of a pain, so hopefully he will jump out by the end of the show. Mike, I think we're going to Cyprus first.
We're going to Cyprus first. So there's a deal done, apparently. The terms of the deal, basically 5.8 billion euros have to be paid out by Cyprus somehow. Depositors in the country's second largest bank, Laiki, with accounts of more than 100,000 euros will lose an unspecified amount of money. So this is what they're terming a haircut.
It's an expensive haircut.
The remainder of the money will come from tax increases and privatisations. You do have to say that right across Europe there's clearly an agenda for privatising everything at the moment. And Cyprus has to agree to restructuring its banking sector because its banking sector has too much money relative to the underlying economy. And the second largest bank, Laiki, will be dissolved into a good bank and a bad bank. And the good bank will be merged into the Bank of Cyprus. I don't know whether they've actually done this or not, but the plans that they were discussing last week were that people with deposits of over 100,000 euros, that those deposits will be put into the bad bank. So in other words, the big deposits into the most risky section. Now Reuters this morning was saying that big bank, the Bank of Cyprus depositors will lose 30% of their savings. In fact, when you read on down, they say that they report that this was something that was reported to Irish radio, but it's not confirmed yet. So whether that's changed since I read that article on Reuters and now, I don't know. But at the moment, it seems like that's not a set amount. But of course, people are starting to get a bit cross about things. So somebody before it's news has posted an article pointing out that one of the branches of the Bank of Cyprus was bombed. Pretty small bomb. I think somebody was just trying to get in to get access to some money or something. But clearly, people pretty irate at the situation in Cyprus, and it's not going to get any better. Precedent has been set Europe-wide now.
Indeed, and would you expect more governments to be putting the same sort of pressure on their citizens, or do you think that Cyprus is a one-off?
No, Cyprus is not a one-off. I think that we've got to remember that the entire European banking system is bankrupt. Nothing's going to change that. This is just another, they're lurching from one crisis to the next. The entire Eurozone is, destroyed. There's no point continuing this unless your policy is to actually destroy the economies of Europe, and that seems to be what they intend to do. So we'll see where this goes, but clearly people in Cyprus are going to be pretty irate about what's going on, but equally people in Russia. And in fact, Medvedev came out and said, this is tantamount to theft, and indeed it is.
And do you think it was a bit of a strategic move on Russia?
I think it was a strategic move on the Russian money that's in Cyprus, Russia could be forgiven for thinking that this is a direct attack on Russia, absolutely. So, anyway, moving on. Telegraph's reporting that gas rationing is inevitable.
Indeed, yeah. So if we're not having our money taken away from us, we seem to be having our resources taken away as well. This is really coming from energy experts, so it's not really coming from a government. And they're simply saying that obviously with our extended wintry spell and with a couple of pipelines that one was shut down on Friday unexpectedly, which saw prices driven up by 50%. We've had another pump fail from an underwater pipeline coming from Europe, and that's also driving up the prices. With these experts, quote unquote, are saying that Britain has less than 36 hours of gas reserves remaining, and with severe cold weather forecasts over the weekend, energy demand is unlikely to be abated. I think this is it's a little interesting story. Where basically the experts are telling us that the government is incompetent and ill-prepared. I don't suppose we need the experts to tell us that. But we have to remember that it's the private experts that are warning about rationing. And as you mentioned before, we've got this drive in Europe, which is sort of privatising pretty much everything that was once public. And if we've then got those same people that are buying up our resources telling us, oh, in the future we're going to have to rationalise those, I think we're getting a little inkling into where we may well be heading. We've got a government here that is really not planning very much for the future. They're not building enough power stations. They are removing high-tech industries. We're having to rely on 9th century technology as we've bounded about for a long time now. And you do have to worry that you've now got the people who are buying up those resources, as I say, threatening to rationalise them. So.
Well, I think the key point is that shortage of gas in this country pushes up. It means that we've got to buy gas quickly. That we've got a definite demand there. That pushes the prices up. It becomes more expensive for us. So miserable. And in the meantime, fuel prices set to soar again, according to the Mail. No surprises here. We've been talking about the rising cost of assets of this kind of commodity for quite some time. But the Mail's reporting that the cost of petrol has soared 5.5% in 2 months, and it's continuing to go in the same direction. This again, another example of a failing economy, and what more can you say? But it's all right because we're actually all just too well off, really.
We're far too wealthy, according to Mr. Heseltine. Lord Heseltine is basically telling us that we're too rich to be bothered to basically make that economic recovery that we also desperately need, although obviously not enough. He's basically saying that because we've got very comfortable lives and we've all got these nice roofs over our head, and comparing us to obviously people who are very poor and underprivileged in third world countries, that we don't really, maybe we don't even need to have an economic recovery. I thought, just reading his comments, I thought was really interesting. He says it's not essential. He's talking about an economic recovery. It doesn't need to. It can go on drifting down. Well, as this is like one of the primary advisors to George Osborne, maybe now we can kind of understand why these wacky policies are kind of coming out that are actually causing more harm to our or appear to be causing more harm to our country. And then he goes on to say, there is no God-given rule saying you've got to have a well-performing economy. It could be an indifferent economy. It's a question of whether the national will is there, whether we want it. And the richer you get, the less imperative there is.
Yeah, I think there's a little more to this story than meets the eye. It's a fairly obtuse attitude that Heseltine seems to be displaying. But I think if you look at it in the context of for example, the comments made by Soros and other people about, it was Brzezinski was talking about how worried he was that the number of people that are waking up to the political agenda that's going on worldwide at the moment. I think what Heseltine is really saying here is, look, guys, don't worry about it too much. People are still too fat and comfortable to be getting excited about what we're doing. So just settle down a bit. I think this is a bit of a smokescreen article, and he's really just looking at what Cameron, Cleggy and these guys are doing, and they're running around in a state of almost panic at the moment, and he's just saying to them, settle down. People are still mostly asleep.
Sure.
I think that's part of it.
Or maybe we're being a bit harsh on him. Maybe if we should.
No, I don't think we are.
Him that when you wake up on a daily basis, being served and eating everything that you want, fine dining dinners all day, and being chauffeured around, maybe it's quite hard to understand what the everyday British person is actually experiencing because he is so far removed from it.
Yeah. Okay, gold. This is quite an interesting article. So this is from Silver Doctor's website. Apparently, as from the 1st of April 2013, ABN AMRO will stop permitting people to take physical delivery of the gold that they buy through ABN AMRO. ABN AMRO's one of the biggest Dutch banks. And they sent a letter to their customers, and it said, as of the 1st of April 2013, ABN AMRO will switch over to another custodian for precious metals, gold, silver, platinum and palladium. Therefore, we will handle and administer your investments in precious metals differently. This is a letter to you In this letter to you, you can read more about this. What will change? With the transition to the new custodian, the following will change for you as of the 1st of April 2013. And first of all, they say you can no longer request physical delivery of your precious metals from us. And then there's a couple of other points they make, and then towards further down the letter they say you don't need to do anything. We will make sure to handle your investments in precious metals in this new way from now on. Well, that's reassuring, isn't it? Basically, what I believe is going on here is that ABN AMRO is looking at the economic situation. They're saying, well, people are having their savings taken away from them in Cyprus. We're a bit worried that they're going to actually ask for the physical metal that they've bought from us, and oh dear, perhaps we've sold more than we actually have. So we know that the gold market is extremely manipulated. Whether ABN AMRO is actually overselling its gold, giving out more bits of paper than it actually has metal for, I don't know. But we do know that that various other metal trading exchanges are doing that kind of thing. So, and this is one of the reasons why the gold price is so depressed.
It's certainly quite an old tactic, isn't it, to oversell something that people are never actually going to get their hands on.
Yeah, but one of the other reasons I was interested in that story is because actually over the weekend a contact of the UK Columns told us that, and we don't know yet whether this is unconfirmed, absolutely unconfirmed, but it is a reliable source, told us that up to 450 metric tons of gold was shipped out of the UK recently on an Antonov aircraft, and they were linking that export of gold actually to the photographs. Do you remember the photographs we were asking questions about that were in the Mail and other newspapers of the Queen inspecting gold in the Bank of England vaults? Yeah. Well, apparently that this export of, as I say, 450, 460 metric tons of gold is linked to that.
So that was like some one last teary goodbye.
Well, indeed, and as I'll just say again, that is unconfirmed at this point. But this is a normally reliable source, so we will keep everybody posted on that if we hear more. Right, the BBC propaganda machine, as we know. The BBC aired last week a play on Radio 3 called Lungs, and it's a play about population, and it's a play about population and carbon dioxide production in particular. So the mother in the play notes, or she makes a comment, I could fly to New York and back every day for 7 years and still not leave a carbon footprint as big as if I have a child. 10,000 tons of CO2, that's the weight of the Eiffel Tower. I'd be giving birth to the Eiffel Tower. So this is what the BBC thinks of childhood. Now, we've seen this massive or at least the cost of children is a common theme that's been pushed on us for quite a lot over the last number of years in the media in general. It's almost as hundreds of thousands of pounds to bring up a child. You really don't want any children. Don't bring up any children. Don't This is just more of that. It's pretty despicable. But we see more because in Pravda over the weekend, so actually on Friday, they carried an article on a report from the United Nations on the growing amount of hunger right across the world. So the article said that the United Nations is saying that 1.2 billion people are now experiencing food shortages, and that's going to get even bigger. So we've talked about the population agenda and the desire to see the population of the planet reduced. We know Jonathan Porritt, Prince Charles, these kind of people are pushing this agenda extremely hard. It seems to me that if you go back 20, 30 years, and we've been talking about hunger and hardship in certain parts of the world. We had entire global rock concerts to try and raise money to solve this problem. The problem is never going to be solved while this population agenda continues, because the policy is to not develop the countries that have these problems and to see people starving to death. And the United Nations is simply pointing out how well that agenda is going at the moment in this report, I believe. So, you know, it's about time the food shortage, the hunger situation was resolved, but it's clearly a policy decision globally through Agenda 21, Millennium Development Goals and so on, and this whole sustainable nonsense that in fact people don't.
Not to mention, of course, the amount of food and clean water that gets wasted in the Western world that could quite easily be shipped across and used to feed people that are starving. So it's not that we can't produce the food, it's simply that, as you say, there is an agenda and there's a policy to ensure those people don't get the correct food and nutrients they need.
Absolutely, and the same agenda then represented by this article, it is in Spanish. This is Santiago Nino Becerra, perhaps, excuse me if I've got that wrong. He's an economist, allegedly, and he's sometimes called the man who predicted the Spanish crisis. But he's basically saying that the lessons of Cyprus, we need to basically, living standards have to be cut. And he said that part of the labour force will, quote, will have to disappear. I'm not quite sure how part of the labour force just disappears.
Maybe he's a Houdini in disguise.
Well, we know that Spain has this huge youth unemployment problem of 50% at the moment. So perhaps that's the part of the labour force that is going to disappear because they're not going to be able to feed themselves. I don't know. He's in this article talking about this economic crisis ending sometime between 2020 and 2023. So we know that that there was a policy that this should be a long drawn out economic crisis. Whether they actually managed to pull a long drawn out economic crisis off or not, or whether that decision's been changed, I think things are going to happen quite a bit more quickly than that. Nonetheless, this gentleman thinks that people just need to disappear. So there you go. This is from the Irish Times, and it's quite a disingenuous is possibly not the right word for it, but basically the battle against normalising suicide is one of society's great challenges, and this is basically an organisation called Console, who allegedly support victims, families who have had family members commit suicide and help people that have suicidal thoughts, they say. Now, the idea of normalising suicide, of course, is one that we've talked about quite a lot in the past, and it's a subject which is highlighted in a book called The Soviet Art of Brainwashing. Basically, the idea that suicide is normal, is something that should be presented to people, and this article really I find quite difficult because on one hand they're saying Irish society is in danger of normalising suicide as one of the number of possible reactions to extreme stress because we're not conditioning our children to accept disappointments in their lives. And then it goes on to say things like, it is becoming apparent to us that young people in particular are increasingly coming to choose suicide as an option, in legitimately trying to understand the pressures that drive some people to take their own lives, but at the same time showing transient or superficial sympathy towards the victims. A trend towards unintentionally legitimising the act may be developing. So they're saying really that they've got to try and convince people that suicide should not be an option. But on the other hand, in the second paragraph of this article, they're saying that Console aims to destigmatise suicide and to work with families and people in crisis to try and take away the stigma that goes with suicide. So on one hand they're saying we've got to stop it, on the other hand we're saying we've got to destigmatise it. So I'm not quite sure whether actually where that article was actually intending to go.
It would certainly fall in line of what we've been getting and what people have been telling us about what education programs are now finding their way into schools and what drama classes are kind of teaching children, and it is to, like you're saying, normalise suicide and to make people feel comfortable with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point that we've tried to make with regard to the suicides, and particularly the organisations that say they're helping prevent suicide, actually aren't helping prevent suicide. They're doing quite the opposite. They're destigmatising it. They're making it normal. Yeah. Injecting people's minds. Yes, exactly. Yes. Right. Now this one. This is the future of the NHS. British Medical Journal article. alleging that privatisation is irreversible. Just to quote one of the sections out of this, they're talking about the new health service regulations. Now those regulations are with us, and those regulations provide the jet engines to make that privatisation go ahead. So all of the rest of the plane was put in place last year, and now at the very last minute before this whole thing happens on the 1st of April 2013, the regulations are coming into place to show that everything has to be put out to competitive markets and so on. So British Medical Journal highlighting that the NHS has effectively been privatised. Now, one of our researchers and authors, Martin Edwards, and I have been doing a bit of work on this. And just before Christmas, we came across an organisation called Monitor that we hadn't heard of before. And it turns out that Monitor is the new NHS regulator.
Why would you need an NHS regulator for something that's government run?
This is a very good question, because of course you don't. You have a regulator where you have a privatised service, like energy or water supply. Mm. You have a regulator, or telecommunications. You have a regulator. The media, you have broadcasting. Anyway, you have a regulator. All the documentation that we're seeing with regard to the National Health Service at the moment is discussing the new NHS. It's all the new NHS. In the nationalised NHS and the National Health Service, the Department of Health was the regulator, but now they've got this other organisation, Monitor, and in fact it was Monitor. The minutes of Monitor's board meetings from the end of last year that alerted us to the existence of the Common Purpose Working Group within the Department of Health, and the Department of Health does not want to tell us what that organisation is. And in fact, the Department of Health has just been caught in a lie in a Freedom of Information answer with regard to the Common Purpose Working Group. So that is an area we're looking at, and we will report more on in the future. But it's clear that all the foundations are in place for a fully privatised National Health Service now, and the British Medical Journal is concerned about it.
And in response to the original mention that privatisation is irreversible, what would you say to that, and how would you think that we could reverse privatisation if we were to find ourselves in that sticky place?
This kind of rhetoric is used quite a lot. Irreversible, everything's irreversible. We can't leave the EU, or when we sign the next treaty or the next convention, we can't. It takes us in further, and we can't get back out again. We can always get back out of these situations. You can always reverse these situations. It simply requires politicians to be encouraged to do the right thing, and how we encourage them, well, we leave that to people to think about. But everything is reversible, and I think we need to do that pretty quickly, because as Toya Wilcox has discovered, people's parents, grandparents are being put on death pathways without any kind of consent given, and this has got to be in breach of the most fundamental principles of this country, and where everything is supposed to be by government, by consent, police by consent, everything's supposed to be by consent, but people are being put on death pathways without their consent. Sir David Nicholson's still in his job. This situation needs to be resolved pretty quickly, but let's move on.
Still in his job, doing precisely what I'm sure he's supposed to do.
Exactly.
So we move now to immigration, and we're now being told that we're going to get a much stiffer, much tougher government that's going to really bring in line tough government policies to do with immigration. I try and say this with a straight face, but it is really difficult. So we're being told that people coming into this country will have 6 months to find a job, otherwise they won't have their benefit. They'll have their benefits cut.
Can I just clarify? What Cameron is saying, Chairman Cameron is saying here, is that you can walk into this country and immediately access benefits, having contributed nothing, but that if you haven't found any way to contribute something within 6 months, then you may have your benefits cut.
That is exactly right, and there is nothing to say that somebody could come here for 6 months and then they could go home for a month and then come back for another 6 months or so forth. So there's nothing in here to prevent that. There's nothing here to say that, like as you just pointed out, that if you come to this country, you come already with a job in line, as do many other countries, Australia, New Zealand, and so forth. And we're just it's essentially, I think, to placate the masses, because we've got a rising, in sort of power in UKIP. Not that I have any more faith in UKIP than I do in the other blue, red, or yellow corners. But obviously we've got this now, this popular sort of uprising, and I think that they're trying to quash that sort of movement just simply by saying, oh no, we can be tough as well, even though it is practically still an open door policy, and these people are coming to this country and there are no jobs here anyway. So you have to ask, well, why are they coming to the country in the first place? And I think really what we're doing is we're sort of hinting towards privatisation again as well, because in a privatised world there is no obligation to get benefits, and so now we're being slowly sort of edged to accept the principle that if you don't find a job within 6 months, you will lose your benefits. And within the article itself in the Daily Mail, it was telling us that even British people are not entitled to benefits, off the cuff.
Yeah.
Quote, we're going to give migrants from the European Economic Area a very clear message. Just like British citizens, there is no absolute right to unemployment benefit.
Yeah.
So again, we're now being sort of conditioned to accept the fact that, even British people don't get benefits.
I think that's the main aim of this article. Britain's benefits policy with regard to immigration has been forever nonsense. I mean, for example, you move to France, you're not entitled to anything for 3 years, and you've got to have contributed social services contributions to be entitled to anything. Over here, you get everything with no requirement to contribute. I mean, that's clearly a nonsense policy. We've said it before. Chairman Cameron is not the sharpest tool in the box, but he's not stupid either. So he knows he knows what he's doing. Absolutely.
It's like a hammer. He's not sharp, but he is effective at some jobs. Still sticking with immigration policies, and this is the lady, of course, which
Lynn Homer,
which is I'd say she's incompetent, but actually I think she's probably doing her job. She's doing exactly what she's told to do, and which is a catastrophic failure in the eyes of any normal person, because the Immigration Office is still having the same problems. We've got a backlog of 320,000 migrants, which apparently we're told will take 24 years to clear, and yet in the last article we were told that if you come here and you haven't had a job in 6 months, you'll be off. Well, there's a bit of a conflict of story there.
We have mentioned Lynn Homer before. Remember, she has come from Sheffield, and she's gone, I think it was Birmingham, she's gone to the border agency, where she was incompetent there, destroyed the place. People were almost ready to go on strike, if you remember. Then she got shifted out of that into HMRC, and we've got all this stuff about people not being able to get telephone calls answered, and HMRC is an absolute shambles at the moment. I do believe that she is incompetent. I think she was put in these jobs because she's incompetent. Yeah.
Exactly.
And that she's doing what everybody expected her to do when she was put in the jobs in the first place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And no doubt will walk off with a nice bonus eventually.
Well, I think she's on a significant salary, so yeah. Okay, Michael Gove, what's going on here?
Michael Gove basically is being attacked by, if I can just pull up this story, he's being attacked for basically. Excuse me. He's been for trying to get schools to move into academies. So basically, he's being offering bribes, and he's being twisting arms. Apparently, this is according to the lady at the front, who I can't seem to find her name. Apologies. If I could just quote from what she's had to say about Michael Gove. It's my duty to castigate the man who is undermining everything we stand for. There is just too much going wrong in the state of the Department for Education for it to be ignored. The lack of proper regard for evidence is undermining and harming our pupils' education. So not only is she saying, look, the things that we're having to teach children, that there's just nothing there to back up the credibility of that information, but on top of that, he is also dismantling the education that our children are having to endure, I suppose, is the best way to describe it. schools apparently have been blowing the whistle on the dirty tricks of Gove's a gang of arm twisters, as she describes them, who are basically going, as I've said before, into schools and offering bribes or threats if they don't want to become academies. So again, it's another example of our government dismantling what great heritage we once had.
Well, I'm going to say that may be true, but, and there's a but in this, because there seems to be a fairly major battle going on within the Conservative leadership at the moment, and Michael Gove does not seem to be on the side of Cameron and Clegg, and so I just wonder how much of this is. I mean, the points are right. We shouldn't be privatising our schools by turning them into academies. The standards are rubbish. Whether Gove's plans to improve the standards in schools with the baccalaureate and all this kind of stuff were valid or not, I don't know. But he was trying to do something. He had the rug pulled out from under him. We've got all this in the press, and he's been quite outspoken in recent days with regard to various policies within the Tory leadership. So I just wonder whether this is part of a PR exercise, part of the battle that seems to be going on at the top of the Tory leadership at the moment.
Sure. I think in many ways though, he plays that part well, as in that classic opposition that isn't really opposition. It's just
Yep.
it's just making the point to sound like it.
Yep.
I don't agree with hardly any of his policies, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the man, to be totally honest.
Okay. Well, we throw it out there just to right. Okay. This was a really interesting article, although a bit sort of tabloid, perhaps. Why I didn't realise my perfect man was a sociopath, but you read it in more detail, so you've got some stuff to say about it, I think.
This is an absolutely cracking article, but not for any sort of substance grounds. I have no idea what the Daily Mail is doing here, but I could be reading far too much into this. But you can't really see the full picture on the page in front. But it seems like obviously a staged photograph.
Right.
The article, I think, is incredibly staged because, I mean, I'm not saying that she wasn't married to the guy, but it's interesting that his first name was Cameron.
Right.
And there's no mention of obviously the family name or anything like that. So we get snippets from the article like this. But let me tell you about Cameron. He was a typical sociopath, deceptive, consistently irresponsible, and worst of all, had no remorse about his actions. That sounds familiar to me. And then it goes on to say, Cameron had learned to mimic emotions he was expected to show in certain situations. He worked out what I was looking for and deliberately morphed into that perfect being. It's just so close to home.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, given the articles that the Daily Mail has been coming out with over the last sort of 10 months, you do have to wonder. I just can't help thinking that there are a certain group of people in the Daily Mail who are actually pretty switched on. There's some interesting facts in the article as well. They go on to say an estimated 4% of the population are sociopaths. They're talking about the world population, but I think that's...
Is that actually a quote? An estimated 4% of the population are sociopaths like Cameron? Like Cameron.
No, that's an exact... Yeah, sorry, that's an exact quote. Like Cameron, exactly.
Yeah.
And that equates to 272 million people. And they also say that sociopaths usually have a lack of conscience and may also have a history of impulsive behaviour. But because they're highly intelligent, again, they're telling us, these guys they're not the crooks that you see on the street. These are actual highly intelligent people who are most likely to be in pretty high positions of power. They're entertaining and charming. They blend into society.
Yeah.
I just feel like the Daily Mail is trying to tell us something.
Well, I think it's a good article in that it's highlighting the character traits of low empathy people. So everybody should read that, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, last couple of articles then. Just over the weekend, it was staggering the amount of stuff doing the rounds about Bashar al-Assad being assassinated. RT here is pointing out media websites were abuzz with rumours of Syrian President Bashar Assad's death on Sunday. It was clearly a hoax eventually, but amazing that just the absolute amount of traffic going on over the weekend. But I wanted to finish with this article. This is Shirley Manson, who's the lead singer of the group Garbage. And she's basically saying here that when she was 15 years old, she had a sexual relationship with a music teacher. And I just wanted to read a couple of the quotes here. She issued a statement and it said, "I want to make," and she did it of course via Facebook, where else, "I want to make it perfectly clear once and for all that I've never been the victim of a paedophile, nor have I ever claimed to be. I was a few weeks shy of my 16th birthday, 16 being the legal age of consent in Scotland, when I engaged in a fully consensual relationship with a teacher whose real identity I have always been careful to protect. There are so many people who have been the true victims of sexual abuse throughout the world, and they deserve justice and our compassion. However, I do believe a distinction must be made between a person who is within weeks of the legal age of consent and an innocent child. Well, I'm sorry, but I do not believe a distinction should be made. You are underage. It was a teacher, a person in a position of relative authority and
Trust.
It's almost like you're wanting to suggest that the age of consent should be lowered for relationships between people in that, with that type of age difference. I find that an extremely disturbing position to take in present circumstances.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I couldn't disagree more.
I think as well, even if she was 18 and he was still a teacher, that there's a conflict of trust there. Teachers shouldn't have relationships with pupils at the end of the day, like regardless of their age. Although of course you've rightly highlighted here that if you're under the age of consent, you're under the age of consent, and and that's even more manipulative on the teacher's behalf.
Yeah.
But even so, this is normalising sexual deviancy in my opinion. I don't know about yourself.
That's how I feel about it, and I find this young lady's position quite untenable as far as I'm concerned. Right, just before we finish, I just wanted to mention Tim Rustage, who was arrested on Friday for criticising Eilish Angelini, and we believe that he was kept in Scotland over the weekend, and we believe he will be released on bail today. The key, there are a number of key points about this. That the current situation in Scotland, the present Lord Advocate is also part of the Scottish Parliament, and therefore there is a complete lack of separation of powers there between the judiciary in Scotland and the Parliament. They have already tried to rebuff, palm off the U-Tree investigation that's trying to do some work in Scotland at the moment, but the key issue here, was that Scottish police officers came to England, lifted somebody from his home in England, carried out a search apparently without proper documentation. People from Scotland in England. It's a separate legal system and therefore a completely separate legal jurisdiction. They brought that jurisdiction into Britain in order to carry out the things that they did. There's got to be constitutional issues surrounding this arrest, particularly since all he did was comment about something on a blog, and very disturbing. But anyway, hopefully he'll be released on bail later today and on his way home. But if not, we will certainly be letting people know about that by email, and perhaps we can start phoning the relevant people to ask why.
Well, I think that concludes pretty much all the articles
Does
we've got
indeed.
today.
Yep.
Is there anything you would like to add?
Nope.
No. I'd just like to say we've had a fantastic response with the groups. They're growing really well, so thank you very much for that response. For those people that emailed me last week, I haven't had a chance to email you back, so I apologise for that. I will be straight on that tomorrow, and like I say, I apologise. If there's anybody else who would like to get involved in the groups or to find out if there's a group in your local area, you can email me at malcolm@ukcolumn.org. Would you like to say anything about the forthcoming event? Are we ready to talk about that?
No, not yet. We're getting there. There.
Of course, if you like what we do and you're not already a subscriber, we would love to have you along. Thank you very much for watching today.
Brian will be back tomorrow. See you then.
Would you like to say anything about Brian?
No.
Okay, all right.